Rain tore across the streets of New Orleans, turning the cobblestones of the French Quarter into dark mirrors. Gas lamps flickered in the wind, casting trembling halos of light across balconies and shuttered doors. Avery pulled her thin raincoat, tighter boots splashing through water that rose to her ankles. She breathed hard, not from exhaustion, but from fear. Fear of the footsteps chasing her, fear of the black car she had seen sliding past the corner a block back. In her arms, she clutched a small wooden box, old and weathered, its edges sealed with tape. A single letter H carved roughly into the lid. She had decided to leave in 11 minutes, just enough time to drag her suitcase, tuck a short note under the lamp in her high-rise apartment, and slip the box into her raincoat pocket. The rest she had left behind. Avery. A man's voice cut through the rain. Not their voice, not them. She froze for half a heartbeat and saw a figure standing under the awning of a narrow shop. Its glass door was clouded with steam, a wooden sign swinging in the wind. Bishop's stringed instruments. The man stepped out, rain streaking down his dark hair. "Hey, you should not be out here. The storm drains are overflowing," he called. His voice was rough, warm. "Need a place to wait it out." She almost refused. Instinct told her to keep moving, but headlights flashed at the next corner, and she changed her mind. "Just for a little while," she said. The shop smelled of wet wood, linseed oil, and rosin. Guitars hung on the walls like resting crescent moons, and a long table in the middle was scattered with clamps, sandpaper, and coils of copper strings. Avery kept the box close, as if someone might try to take it. "Towel," the man said, handing her a thick cotton one. "I am Noah, Bishop. The storm damaged a few instruments, so I stayed late to work." He smiled faintly. "And you?" Avery hesitated. She was not ready for the truth. "Ava," she said, using a name she rarely used. Noah nodded and pulled a heavy curtain across the front window. "Ava, your hands are shaking. Let me make you ginger tea." "Thank you." She could still hear a car moving slowly outside. The glass door rattled once, then stilled. The stillness made her want to cry, but she swallowed it down and looked around instead. There was a violin in a clamp, a row of polished tuning pegs, and an old black-and-white photograph of a man smiling with a guitar in his lap. "My father," Noah said, noticing her glance. "He passed when I was 20, left me this place. I promised I would keep it storm or no storm." Avery nodded. A simple promise. A simpler world. Noah placed a warm mug in front of her. She pulled off her gloves, fingers stiff from the cold, and held it. "Thanks," she murmured. "Where were you heading this late?" Noah asked, his tone curious but not pressing. "I need to get this somewhere before someone takes it," she said, glancing at the box. He looked at it but asked nothing. "Want to lock it in my safe." "Old combination lock, only I have the key." "That is kind, but no," she said, holding it tighter. "I will be gone as soon as the rain slows." "All right." He pulled a bare guitar body closer, holding its neck with one hand and a file with the other. "If you do not mind the sound of scraping, stay as long as you like. Might even make the thunder easier." She smiled faintly. His steady filing made a soft, rhythmic sound, like distant rain. It made her think of snow, something she had barely seen in years of traveling for work, years too busy to hear the sound of wood being shaped. "What do you do, Ava?" Noah asked, still focused on the guitar. "I design experiences," she said carefully. "For people." "Sounds like a big job." "Big enough to leave no room for the small things," she replied. "What about you? Does making instruments pay enough?" "Not much, but enough. And some days a kid plays the first note on an instrument I fixed and smiles like they just won the lottery. Those days I feel rich. The answer touched her more than she expected. Outside, the horn of a riverboat called from the Mississippi. Avery set her mug down. "Are you running from someone?" Noah asked softly. "I am running from a decision that was signed for me," she said. "Or more like a play that already had its ending written. Do you want to rewrite it?" "That is why I am holding this box," she said. "Inside is something that could change the ending." He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. His quiet trust in her right to keep secrets made her throat ache. A flash of lightning lit the room. Noah went to the curtain and peeked out. Black car. 3 men standing under the awning across the street, not coming inside, just watching. Avery gripped the box harder. "I do not want to drag you into this." "I already stepped in when I offered you tea," he said. There is a back door, leads to an alley, and then the courtyard of a beignet shop. The owner is tough, but she will help." "You talk like a movie." "New Orleans is like that." He handed her a rain jacket from a hook. "Hood up. Let's go." They moved through a narrow hallway, smelling of old wood. The metal door opened to a dark alley. The sound of her name came again from the street. "Avery Hart. You are making this harder on yourself." Noah glanced at her recognition flickering. The surname was known hotels' charity galas. Avery bit her lip. "I will explain later," she said. "For now, please just go." They ran. Rain slapped against their faces. Behind them came splashes and angry voices. They crossed into the beignet shop's courtyard, where a tall woman with flour on her apron opened the door. "Another stray Noah?" she asked. "One worth keeping," he said, guiding Avery inside. "We need your back exit." The woman handed Avery an oversized plastic raincoat. "I do not need the story. I just know we do not hand people over to the kind who stand in the rain, watching." A minute later, they were back outside, moving through a quieter lot behind a church. Avery pulled her hood lower. "You know who I am now, don't you?" "I can guess," Noah said. "But right now, all I see is someone cold holding a heavy box. That is what matters." "If I told you this box holds proof that could stop a corporate project from wiping out a neighborhood full of music and bakeries, would you believe me? I have lived here long enough to know everything beautiful has someone trying to buy it. And I have fixed enough instruments to know a small crack in the right place can save the sound." Avery looked at him for a long moment. Behind them, her name rang out again closer. She held the box tighter. "The hard road," she said quietly. "But it is mine." Noah nodded. "Then let's take it." They reached a small gate at the far end of the lot. Beyond it, warm light spilled from old apartment windows. She turned to him. "If I said come with me, would you—" He smiled slightly. "I have been going since I put that tea in front of you." She pushed the gate open, the hinges groaning like a long-stuck note finding its voice again. Together under the huge umbrella, they stepped forward and into whatever came next. The rain slowed to a steady whisper by the time Avery and Noah reached the far side of the block. The glow from the old apartment windows was soft golden, spilling onto the wet pavement. Somewhere above them, a radio played faint jazz, a trumpet bending each note until it felt like a sigh. Noah led her down a narrow passage between 2 building zongs. The bricks here were chipped, patched in places with mismatched mortar. At the end of the passage stood a small back door with peeling blue paint. "This is me," he said, fitting a key into the lock. "Upstairs. 2 rooms. Not much, but safe." Inside, the air was warm from an old radiator ticking in the corner. The living room was small. A couch worn smooth from years of use, shelves lined with books, a workbench with wood shavings still scattered across it. In the corner stood an upright piano with several keys out of tune. "You live here alone?" Avery asked, setting the wooden box down on the coffee table but still keeping it within reach. "Since my dad passed, yes." Noah shrugged out of his jacket, hanging it on a hook by the door. "I do most of my work in the shop, but I come up here to breathe." She nodded, her eyes scanning the shelves. She noticed a glass jar filled with bits of broken guitar picks, a faded map of Louisiana pinned to the wall, and a black and white photo of a boy, Noah, she guessed, holding a tiny banjo, smiling too wide for his face. "Sit. I'll make something warm to eat," he said. "I do not want to trouble you. You already are trouble," he said with a faint grin, heading into the small kitchen. "Might as well feed you." She sat listening to the clink of pots and the sound of water running. Her body was still tense, ready to move at the first sign of danger. But here, in this cramped room above the street, there was a kind of quiet that felt almost foreign. From the kitchen, Noah asked, "You get any rest last night?" Avery hesitated. "I have not slept much in weeks." "That explains the shadows under your eyes," he said lightly, though his voice carried more concern than humor. She looked down at the box. Its corners were damp from the rain, the tape starting to curl at one edge. She reached out and pressed it flat again, as if that could keep everything inside from spilling out into the world. Noah returned with 2 steaming bowls of gumbo. He set one in front of her. "Eat." The first spoonful burned her tongue, but the heat spread through her chest, loosening something she hadn't realized was clenched. "This is good," she said. "My grandmother's recipe," he replied. "She used to say a pot of gumbo could bring strangers to the same table." Avery met his eyes. "And then what?" "Then they stop being strangers." They ate in silence for a while. The rain outside softened further, turning into the light tapping of drops against the window. After dinner, Noah cleared the bowls and set a kettle on the stove. "You want tea?" She shook her head. "I just want to sit a minute." He nodded and moved to the workbench, picking up a half-finished mandolin. The soft scrape of sandpaper filled the room again. She found herself watching his hands, steady, deliberate, shaping something fragile into something that could sing. "You do not ask many questions," she said after a while. "Questions can make people close up. Sometimes you have to wait until they are ready to open." "That sounds like something you learned the hard way." He looked up, met her gaze. "It is." They stayed like that, not speaking but not needing to, until a car passed slowly on the street below. Avery's shoulders tensed. She moved to the window, parting the curtain just enough to see. A black sedan idled by the curb, headlights dimmed. "They found me," she whispered. Noah joined her, his expression calm but sharp. "We will keep the lights off. They cannot get up here without coming through the shop downstairs, and I locked it tight." "They do not need to get up here to make me leave," she said. Her voice trembled in spite of herself. He turned to face her. "Who are they?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had kept the truth locked away for so long that letting it out felt like standing on a cliff's edge. But the box on the table, the car outside, and the steady presence beside her all pressed her toward a choice. "My name is not Faye," she said finally. "It is Avery Hart." Noah's eyes flickered with recognition. "Hart? As in—" "Yes, the hotels, the real estate developments, the deals that turn neighborhoods into glass towers." Her voice was flat. "They are my family's deals, and I am supposed to be part of the next one." His gaze moved to the wooden box. That is what is inside. Documents, contracts, evidence. Enough to stop it if it reaches the right hands. She looked away. But they would rather I disappear quietly than let me ruin the plan. Noah was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You are not disappearing here. Not tonight." "Why?" she asked, almost accusing. "You do not know me." He held her gaze. "Because you ran into the rain holding something you refused to let go of. That tells me enough." She felt something break loose inside. Not the panic, but the weight of holding everything alone. She sank onto the couch, hands covering her face. He did not come closer, but his voice stayed steady in the quiet. "We will figure it out in the morning," he said. "For now, you should rest." The car outside drove away its tires, hissing on the wet street. Avery lowered her hands. "And if they come back, then we will still figure it out." The next morning, the storm had moved east, leaving the streets washed clean and glittering under pale winter sunlight. Avery woke on Noah's couch to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of a guitar being tuned. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then her eyes landed on the wooden box on the table, and she did. Noah was at the window adjusting the blinds, so the light fell across the workbench, but not on her face. "Morning," he said when he noticed her sit up. "Morning," she murmured, her voice rough from sleep. He handed her a mug. "Black unless you want sugar." "This is fine." She held it close, letting the steam warm her face. They didn't talk about the car from the night before. Instead, he asked if she wanted breakfast. They ended up in the kitchen together, him scrambling eggs while she sliced bread. It was the first time in weeks she'd done something as ordinary as stand barefoot on a worn kitchen mat, while sunlight touched her shoulders. Later, Noah went downstairs to open the shop for a few hours, locking the front door from inside so only regulars who knew the knock could get in. Avery stayed upstairs reading from his shelves. She found a collection of poems so old the pages had turned the color of tea and spent most of the afternoon curled in the armchair, tracing the faded words with her fingertip. When Noah came back up, he carried a small paper bag. "Mrs. Alvarez sent beignets," he said. "She said to tell you the sugar is free, but the smiles cost extra." Avery laughed, the sound surprising both of them. "How much are smiles these days?" "Depends who's buying," he replied, pouring them both coffee. They fell into a rhythm over the next few days. She helped him sort strings and polish wood in the shop. He showed her how to tell when a guitar's neck was warped just by running a finger along it. They ate most meals in the apartment, but sometimes took short walks through the neighborhood at night when the streets were quiet. Avery kept her hood up and stayed close to Noah's side. One night they stopped outside a jazz bar where music spilled out through the open door. "Want to go in?" Noah asked. "I can't," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "Because of them." "Because of me," she corrected. "Too many people still know my face." He didn't push. Instead, they stood outside, listening until the song ended, then walked back in comfortable silence. On the fourth morning, she was in the shop when an older man came in, carrying a battered violin case. "Bishop?" He greeted Noah, then nodded politely at Avery. She stepped aside while Noah examined the instrument, running his hands over its worn curves like a doctor checking a pulse. "Needs new strings, bridge adjustment, and a little polish," Noah said. "Whatever it takes to make her sing again," the man replied. "She belonged to my wife." When the customer left, Avery touched the violin gently. "You treat them like they're alive." "They are," Noah said simply. That night, over bowls of gumbo reheated from the freezer, she asked, "If you had to leave this place, what would you take?" He thought for a moment. My father's guitar, a few tools, maybe the picture of my grandmother making gumbo. Not the shop. The shop's a building. The work is what matters. I can do that anywhere. Avery looked down at her hands. I used to think I could do my work anywhere too, but I realized it was never my work, it was theirs. I was just the name on the paperwork. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "So maybe it's time you find something that is yours." The words stayed with her long after he fell asleep in the chair with a book in his lap. She lay on the couch, the wooden box resting on the floor beside her, and thought about the contracts inside, how they could save an entire neighborhood, but also how they could destroy her family's empire. She wasn't sure which outcome frightened her more. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, quiet enough that the air itself felt heavy. Noah was in the shop below, fixing a cracked ukulele. Avery had stayed upstairs, folding the blanket on the couch and making a mental list of things they might need if they had to leave quickly: food cache. The wooden box, maybe one change of clothes each. She opened the blinds just enough to let the winter light spill in. A small group had gathered across the street in front of Mrs. Alvarez's bakery, tourists, with cameras pointing at the colourful tiles along the curb. Avery was about to turn away when one of them lifted their phone toward her window. The flash was quick, accidental maybe, but her stomach dropped. She stepped back, letting the curtain fall. A cold prickle ran along her skin. 10 minutes later, she heard Noah's voice on the stairs, steady but clipped. He appeared in the doorway holding a folded newspaper. "This just came in with the afternoon delivery," he said. He set it on the table. Her face stared up from the front page. Not the tired, hidden Avery of the past week, but a version from 2 years ago. Hair swept up evening gown, like liquid silver standing beside her father at a charity gala. The headline read, "Avery Hart, Missing Family Offers Substantial Reward for Information." She stared at it until the letters blurred. "They know I'm here," she whispered. "Not yet," Noah said. "This is still yesterday's story. But if that photo from the street gets posted anywhere—" He didn't finish. "I've brought trouble to your door," she said, her voice breaking. "I should leave tonight." "No," he said quickly. "Running blind will only make you easier to find. They'll hurt you, Noah." He leaned against the table. "They won't, because they think I'm nothing. And people who think you're nothing usually don't see you coming." She shook her head. "You don't understand what they're capable of." "I understand enough," he said. "And I'm still here." For a moment, neither spoke. The newspaper between them might as well have been a line drawn in the floor. Avery could feel the truth pressing at the edges of the silence, begging to be spoken. "They want me to sign the final contracts this month," she said finally. "It's a development deal that will gut half of Treme, the music halls, the small shops, the homes that have been here for generations. They're going to replace it all with glass hotels, luxury apartments, chain stores. My father calls it progress. I call it theft." Noah's jaw tightened. "And that's what's in the box?" "Everything. Plans, contracts, internal emails, enough to kill the deal in court, if it gets to someone who will actually use it." "Then we get it to them," he said, as if it were that simple. Her laugh came out sharp. "You think you can just walk it to the right desk? My family has lawyers who could bury the truth under 1,000 pages of paper." "We'll figure out a way," he said. "But you can't do it from hiding forever." She dropped into the chair, burying her face in her hands. "I don't want to be Avery Hart anymore." "Then don't," Noah said. "Be the person who carries that box and nothing else." The words landed in her chest like a heartbeat. She lowered her hands. If I stay, they'll come here. Then we don't stay, Bill, he said. We move before they do. Avery looked toward the window where the winter light had begun to dim. The street was quiet again, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way. She reached for the box and held it close. When do we leave? She asked. Noah's answer was immediate. Tonight. They left just after midnight, slipping out through the back stairwell while the street was empty. Noah carried a canvas bag with tools, food, and a change of clothes. Avery kept the wooden box under her arm, wrapped in an old scarf. The city was quieter than she'd ever seen it. Even the usual late-night music drifting from the quarter had faded to a hum in the distance. Their plan was simple. Take the box to a community organizer named Gloria Webb, someone Noah trusted. Gloria had been fighting development projects like the Heart deal for years, and she had the legal contacts Avery couldn't reach on her own. She also had a meeting scheduled in 3 days, a public hearing with the city council and the developers' representatives. If Avery could get there, she could put the truth in front of everyone who mattered. They stayed the first night in a spare room above a corner grocery, courtesy of one of Noah's friends. The next night, they hid in a loft used by a local brass band to store equipment. By the third morning, Avery's nerves were raw from listening for every creak in the floorboards, every car that slowed outside. The hearing was held in the municipal building, a tall, echoing place with high ceilings and long wooden benches. They slipped in through a side entrance minutes before it started hoods low. The room was already packed. Residents of Tremé shop owners, musicians, clutching instruments like shields. On the far side, Avery saw them. Her father in a tailored suit, flanked by 2 Hart Holdings attorneys, their briefcases neatly stacked. She froze. He's here. You knew he would be, Noah murmured. This is his stage too. The council chair called the meeting to order. One by one, speakers took the podium. A trumpet player who'd been playing on Frenchman Street for 40 years, a bakery owner whose family had survived Katrina, but feared they couldn't survive progress. The attorneys for Hart Holdings countered with slides and projections talking about revenue jobs modernization. Then Gloria's name was called. She walked to the podium, her voice clear and sharp. She talked about community, about history, about the kind of damage you couldn't measure in dollars. And then she said, "We have documents that show this deal is not what it claims to be." A ripple went through the room. Avery felt her heart pounding. Gloria looked toward the back toward her. "It's time," Noah said quietly. Her knees felt unsteady as she stood. The room seemed to narrow, the noise flattening into a low hum. She walked forward, the wooden box in her hands. Her father's head turned slowly. His eyes locked on hers, cool, calculating, but with a flicker of something sharper underneath. Avery reached the podium and set the box down. She pulled off the scarf, opened the lid, and took out the thick stack of papers. "My name is Avery Hart," she said, her voice carrying in the chamber. "And I am here to tell you that this deal is built on lies." Gasps echoed. Cameras flashed. She went on detailing the clauses buried in the contracts, the side agreements with national chains that would wipe out local businesses, the inflated promises that would never reach the people being displaced. She spoke without notes, her voice gaining strength with each word. Her father rose from his seat. "Avery, this is not the place." "This is exactly the place," she said, not turning to him. "Because for once I'm speaking where everyone can hear." The council members leaned forward. Reporters scribbled. Noah stood at the back, watching her, his hands in his pockets, a faint, proud smile on his face. When she finished, the room was silent for a beat. Then someone began to clap, slow, deliberate. It spread until the chamber filled with applause loud enough to drown out her father's voice as he tried to object. Avery stepped away from the podium papers, still in her hands. She walked toward Noah. Her father's words followed her threats, promises, a final warning, but they didn't stick. "You did it," Noah said when she reached him. "We did it," she corrected. The chamber stayed noisy long after the meeting was adjourned. Council members huddled in side conversations. Reporters chased statements, and residents came up to Avery one by one, some shaking her hand, some hugging her. She caught fragments of their words. "Thank you, you saved our block. You didn't have to do this for us. But you did." Her father left before it ended, his attorneys close behind. He didn't look back. She didn't expect him to. By the end of the week, the council voted to halt the development, pending investigation. The contracts Avery had exposed were placed into public record. Hart Holdings issued a statement calling her misguided and misinformed, but it was too late. The city's residents had the truth, and they weren't letting go. Avery didn't return to the Hart penthouse or the life that came with it. Instead, she stayed in Tremé, working alongside Gloria's team, helping small businesses with permits and funding. She moved her things, what little she owned now, into Noah's apartment above the shop. The wooden box stayed on the shelf in the living room. Empty now, it was still the first thing she saw every morning, a reminder that carrying the truth had been worth it. One late afternoon, months later, Noah called from the shop. "Come down here." She found him tuning a newly restored guitar. "Play something," she said. Instead, he handed it to her. "You first." She laughed, protesting that she didn't know how, but he showed her a few chords, his hands guiding hers on the frets. The sound was rough, uneven, but the vibration under her fingertips felt like a pulse. "You hear that?" he asked. "I hear noise," she teased. "That's the start of a song," he said. "Give it time." Spring came early that year. One Saturday morning, they walked to the farmer's market together. The same jazz bar they'd once passed without going in had its doors open wide, music tumbling into the street. Noah stopped. "Want to go in now?" Avery hesitated only a second before nodding. Inside the room smelled of brass and smoke, and something sweet baking in the back. They sat near the stage, shoulder to shoulder, listening as the trumpet bent each note into something aching and beautiful. At one point, she leaned toward him. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't stopped that night in the rain?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I'm more interested in what happens now." She smiled, resting her head briefly against his shoulder. Outside, the city kept moving. Deals were still made, streets still flooded in the rain, music still spilled out of doorways. But here in this moment, they'd built something no contract could buy. And as the song swelled, Avery thought of the life she'd chosen, not the one with her name on towers, but the one where her hands could shape a chord, where her voice could carry in a room, and where she could walk home through the quarter, knowing that for once, she belonged exactly where she was.